in terms of the transaction and confirmation, Stacks actually is pegged to Bitcoin, right? So if you send a transaction, you have to wait for like the Bitcoin confirmation. So it's not the best when it comes to speed. I always tell people slowly but surely.
I think what would be interesting for our viewers to see is when a project grows rapidly like this, how does the team grow? And so, could you explain a little bit more about your team? How many developers you have currently? How fast did it grow? And if you had any challenges growing the team itself?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. And in crypto, we need more people, right? I think like so for me, I try to bring in more of my friends to crypto because there's like always a battle of talent and we need more talent in the ecosystem. But I think to eliminate the confusion, let's think of Stacks as like there's no single owns it after the launch last year. I think there's always a confusion with people in the space that they feel like, okay, there's the foundation and they're working on Stacks. I think that's the wrong approach. So the foundation actually empowers all the builders, all the founders to actually make Stacks better. And there's various entities within the ecosystem that actually do the same. So for me, I would rather focus the question on more like the community level. How many contributors are there on Stacks? How many applications are being built on Stacks? How many companies are there on Stacks? So in terms of direct contributors on the network, there's at least 400 to 500 people, which you can classify as developers, founders, community builders that are directly contributing on the network. And in terms of companies built on Stacks, there's currently 69 companies on Stacks. Shout out to Stacks Ventures / our accelerator because they actually incubate 20 plus companies every 1 to 2 quarters out of the year. That's why there's a lot of companies built on Stacks. And in terms of the community landscape, there's currently 150,000 community members spread across various social channels such as Telegram, Discord, and others. I think that's a good overall landscape of like the Stacks ecosystem. I'm part of the foundation. I always love the foundation, and our team, the foundation, is quite small. So last year I think we were like less than 6, 7, and now we're actually more than 10, but less than 15. I forgot the exact number, but somewhere along those lines.
Okay, so very impressive. 69 entities working on the stacks. That is pretty big, I think. So from my users, one question is pop up in the chat is there are many people wanting to know how the decentralized groups the work in the crypto industry. So could you explain how the stacks the working each other, and then what is the culture, and then how have you interact with the team on a daily basis?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, because okay, I'm gonna give you a little bit of backstory, right? So before we launched the mainnet last year, there's Blockstack PBC that's actually working on the protocol. And once we launched the network, we actually decentralized. So Blockstack PBC became Hero, and Hero was the one working on developer tools now. And then there's a foundation, which is I'm a part of. We actually push forward like protocol research, grants, and all this kind of stuff. And then you have other entities such as like Damon that works on the mining and others, So now that's what we call path to decentralization. So I think as a protocol in crypto, you can decentralize in the beginning, right? So for example, okay, you can decentralize now and then have the same ending, or you can decentralize later when the protocol is much mature. So you have much more a coordinated effort to actually build the entire thing, right? It's just different strategy, but same ending. And for Stacks, we opt in for the latter. So we actually started as like a centralized entity, and then we decentralized once we actually launched the network. And yeah, that's how we did it. And you guys could judge on what you think is the best approach. But then in terms of culture, I would love to talk about the culture of the Stacks community. I think everybody's mostly pro innovation and they embrace open mindedness, right? Shout out to
Mm.
all the Bitcoin maxis that hates us. I hope hopefully someday they'll love us, you know. But for Stacks, I think everybody just embrace technology and innovation as its finest. I'm a multi-chain guy. I
Mm.
believe that certain blockchain is certain for certain use cases, right? And I
Mm.
always give that example. For example, maybe for Professor Joe NFT that's worth 69 million, he doesn't want it to be secured on Ethereum. Maybe he wants it to be secured on Bitcoin, right? And that means he goes to Stacks. Or maybe Bellamy is doing a concert on, a concert and he wants NFT as tickets. And for that sense, I think the perfect blockchain for that is Solana, right? Because they claim to have like the fastest confirmation. And this mindset is actually embedded on the Stacks community. And I can give you some examples on how. So for example, you have NFT projects such as Megapont and Satoshi Balls, and they actually created a bridge so you can actually put your NFT from Stacks to Ethereum, right? And then as an NFT marketplace or an NFT collection, you want your users to have choices. And that's the entire vision of crypto, user-owned internet where Professor Joe, Bellamy, and Louis has the freedom of choice, right? Yeah, that's how I would sum it. But disclaimer, everything is on my opinion. So,
Mhm.
maybe other people will tell the same.
Okay, so the from my experience, so when I met the Luis the last year, I think if I remember if my memory is correct, we are met like in the December last time because I applied to the grant program on the Stacks. So the Luis and they gave us some advice for the development and then connecting the tech guys to our the dApps. So what I realized from from the Reese is the Stacks is very friendly to all of the things, and then they are very open mind. So when I told to the Luis I need help, and then the Luis said we always open for the chat, and then I can help you anytime. So that is very open mind the culture in the Stacks. So I'm very love it and very impressive from the Stacks.
Yeah, I think for us, because I was a community before and I know what it feels like to enter a project and you don't really know what you're doing. So for us, I think the job is you just try to welcome Joe with everything, right? Because then this community member could actually build the next billion-dollar protocol on Stacks. You don't know, right? So it's just you want to say hi, you want to provide them with the resources, and yeah, I think you want to remove the feeling of alienation by the end of the day because it's a community, right? And then of course the community is a reflection of the people inside of the ecosystem.
Thank you very much for the insights. That's a really priceless insight that you are giving us and also our community. Let's talk. You are the growth lead, so let's talk about growth in Stacks.
Dude.
Um, you have achieved a very fast growth in a short period
Mm-hmm.
of time, and
Mm-hmm.
we are all wondering what do you think, as the lead growth lead at Stacks, was the main drivers to this fabulous growth that you have experienced?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I would always put a shout out to all the builders out there who keep building on Stacks because they're the ones who are like the main drivers of the growth, right? But if we're gonna be looking at it from like a more informative kind of information. So, for example, I would segment it into three buckets, right? So you have the first proposition that Bitcoin as a settlement layer, it actually attracts developers. So that's the example of the use case that I gave for you guys as NFT, right? And the next driver, in my opinion, is the consensus mechanism proof of transfer. So with proof of transfer, you're actually able to create new business model, right? I'm going Another example, Arcadico. So Arcadico is the counter version of MakerDAO on Stacks. But the proposition that they have is they actually use stacking. So stacking is where you lock your Stacks token in order to get rewarded with Bitcoins. And now they combine it with the MakerDAO from Ethereum, and now they were able to create self-repaying loans with Bitcoin. And I think those are fascinating. And the third driver. Okay, before we move on to the third driver, I'm going to give another example. So by leveraging proof of transfer, you can actually create use cases such as what if Professor Joe NFT could yield Bitcoin? That's possible on Stacks, right? So I think though, and as a developer and as an engineer, you always want to innovate and create things. And it attracts developers. And the last thing that makes it super attractive, and like what Joe said, is the community, right? Because the community is always welcoming, and they will always be here, oh, how can we help each other, and that's a reason to stay. And I mean, I've delved on other protocols, I invested on other protocols, I look at Ethereum, I look at Avalanche, I love everything, but by the end of the day, my heart will always go to Stacks. Because if you even go to the Stacks conference, this April, you're gonna see it's like super tight. Like everybody's like, "Oh my god, it's nice to meet you," after like 2 years. It's like a family. And yeah, I think those three things are probably the main driver of growth in the ecosystem.
Thank you very much. That's very clear, and it's very interesting to see these kind of innovative platforms grow so fast. And using Bitcoin as a boyfriend, like you said, is a very interesting idea, actually.
Yeah, right.
But let's now talk about the challenges that you are currently facing as the girlfriend of Bitcoin. I think from our community we have assembled two challenges, feedbacks that we've received. The
Yeah.
first one, which is EVM compatibility. I'm sure that you hear this a lot.
Of course.
Difficult to build projects on Stacks because it's not EVM compatible. Do you have any plans to become EVM compatible or to address this issue somehow?
Yeah, I think that's like the $1 million question, right? Like, will Stacks go EVM? And at the foundation, so I'm going to give you an overview on how we work. So we actually try to segment it into three buckets. So you have like the application layer, you have the network layer, and then you have the protocol layer. So in the application layer, for example, the main objectives is, okay, how do we attract more capital? How many applications are being built on Stacks? Or on the network layer comes as, okay, how many developers are building on Stacks? What are we doing to actually enhance the infrastructure? Do we have network bridges? Are we going to do EVM compatibility? And then in the protocol level, you have much more, okay, how many people are contributing on the core protocols, like the Stacks improvement proposal, governance, and all this kind of stuff. So EVM compatibility goes on the network layer, and we already started various initiatives in it at the beginning of the year. So if you're following Stacks closely before, okay, let's move on for EVM first, but let's talk about network bridges, right? So before, because like Stacks is a separate blockchain, I do a lot of partnerships, and usually when we approach partnership, they can, and my opening line is, "We're not EVM compatible." And it's either a yes or no. And they're like, "Yeah, I don't think we can work with you guys because we try to prioritize EVM compatible." So it's either they're betting on Bitcoin and Stacks, that's why they want to work with us, but we experience it as like one of the bottlenecks. Going back to the questions, okay, we started the initiative of network bridges. So this year, you're going to see definitely Stacks to be connected with other blockchains. So for example, shout out to the guys at Aussies who did Orbit Bridge. They're currently on testnet, and this will connect Stacks to 11 public blockchains such as Klatlin, Icon, BSC, Ethereum, XRP, you name it. They actually bridge over 10 billion worth of assets, and they're set to go live on mainnet once we launch Stacks 2.1. And then we also have partnership with the bridge, but these are more on like the fungible token side. And then on the NFT side, you have various community efforts such as Satoshi Bulls, an NFT collection on Ethereum, they actually built a Stacks bridge to move Stacks and to move Ethereum NFT to Stacks. And then for your question, which is EVM compatibility, we actually have a team. I can't say it now, but they're a team that's working on a smart contract bridge that will actually enable clarity and solidity, on Stacks. So yeah, definitely we're gonna see it, I think, this year. Yeah, I'm super excited because I think once Stacks goes multi-chain, you're gonna see what I said at the beginning, which is hyper growth, right? Because Polygon did the same thing, Binance Smart Chain did the same thing, Avalanche did the same thing, Solana did the same thing. Once they go multi-chain, the growth is just, it's like a hockey stick. It's like, phew. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my thesis. Giving you first scoop, but
Thank you for explanation. I think the second best question is about the speed. So yeah, a lot of the users so wondering when the stacks can the speed up when they make the transaction. So early this year, the Hero announced the hyperchain, and it states that the speed on the stacks could be better than now. So what is the hyperchain, and then what value would it bring to the stacks ecosystem as a whole?
Yeah, amazing. To answer that question, I'm going to give everybody a bit of context. So, in terms of the transaction and confirmation, Stacks actually is pegged to Bitcoin, right? So, if you send a transaction, you have to wait for like the Bitcoin confirmation. So, it's not the best when it comes to speed. I always tell people slowly but surely. but, yeah. But of course, in terms of the scalability solution, that's why they came up with Hyperchain, right? So that's like the next upgrade for the Stacks protocol. So what do we mean by Hyperchain? So as a builder, you can actually opt in for performance, and then you trade off decentralization. So by leveraging Hyperchain that's made by Hero, you can actually process high volume of time-sensitive transaction. And as a user, we can now say hello to instant settlement for millions of transactions, of course, on Bitcoin. But if we look at it now, I think everybody knows, especially in the Stacks community, when Alex launched, which is a DeFi protocol on Stack that enables you to do like token launchpads, borrowing, lending without liquidation risk. The network was quite congested because you can only put so much on like the Bitcoin transaction, right? So with Hyperchain, it actually enables to settle millions of stacks transaction on like a Bitcoin transaction. So you could probably expect the same speed as Solana. But then again, they give the builders the choice because once you opt in for speed, that means you sacrifice decentralization. So you have like various levels of decentralization, and it's up to you as a builder. Okay, we want to opt in for speed because we're doing like high frequency trading, right? So that means you really want to have speed, or else it doesn't make sense for you to build on Stacks, right? So those are the things that we try to put forward, and as a builder, you always have a choice, right? So it's your choice to how much you will utilize Hyperchain to actually sacrifice decentralization, because some use cases they prefer to be decentralized, right? Like maybe for a DAO voting, you don't really need Hyperchains because maybe the voting is within like 10 days, right? And for that kind of sense, it makes more to actually have decentralization rather than speed. So those things, I think, yeah, is what Hyperchain is all about. If you look at Hero's latest blog, they're currently on testnet and it's set to launch in June.
Thank you very much, Louise. We only have 4 minutes left, so maybe let's do a last question about the long term of Stacks. What I think users want to know is what's really the vision that you think Stacks has in the long term, and what would be the most important milestone that you would like to achieve this year?
Yeah. I think that the long-term goal for Stacks is it goes back to the original question of how do we make Bitcoin valuable, right? So how do we actually make Bitcoin relevant while all these other chains flourish. That is the end goal for Stack. That is the North Star. So if you think of Bitcoin as a country, okay, how do we actually increase its GDP? I don't think we increase it by, just, okay, we use it for peer-to-peer electronic cash payment. No. Or maybe we increase it by just, digital gold. No. You want Bitcoin to actually have all the important transactions in the internet settle on it. And that's how you make it valuable. And that's what Stack's long-term goal is, right? If Bitcoin enables DeFi, NFT, DAOs, DIDs, that's the end goal. That's the end goal. We actually unlock Bitcoin's $1 trillion capital. And yeah, I think that's the angle for Stacks. And then for my personal self, the angle for me is to onboard more people to crypto. That's why we co-founded Rider, which is the first social wallet. A little plug into everybody. So we're actually working on decentralized identity and hardware on Stacks because we felt like the ultimate solution boils down to hardware plus software. Because if we look at the technical and technological paradigm, for example, Web 1, you have the information age, which was catapulted by PCs. And then in Web 2, which is all about the user generation content, it was forefronted by smartphones. The question is, what is it for Web 3? What is the thing, hardware plus software, that will move the space to actually onboard the next 100 million? I don't think we have the solution for it. That's why we created Rider, which is a different approach for it, and I think the goal for Joe Bellamy, that's why you're doing this podcast, is to onboard more people in the space, right? Because the technical bars are very, very high. I mean, if we're being honest here, I have friends in 2016, same time as me, that wanted to go into crypto. 6 years later, they still want to go in, and I think, yeah, if we're able to solve that problem as a community and as a space together, I think crypto could actually, succeed in the vision that it promised. Yeah, so those are the things. Hopefully that was a good conclusion, everybody.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Luis. Maybe Professor Joe, we should wrap up.
Yeah,
Maybe you could.
sure. Yeah, sure. Thank you for the having you on this community, and then appreciate all your kind explanation. It's very first time to understand about the stacks and you. So, do you have any word you want to you want to say to the Korean the crypto users?
Of course, I would plug in Stacks and Rider for everybody. If you guys want to get plugged into the Stacks ecosystem, just join our Discord, follow the Twitter. You can always DM me. I'll try to respond within 24 hours. And then, yeah, for Rider, you can follow us also at Rider_ID on Twitter. And that's it. Thank you so much, Joe and Bellamy, for hosting. Super appreciate it.
Thank you, Luis.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you, Professor Joe.